What's up, guys? Welcome to the first podcast of the xEP network. I'm excited to finally be doing this. We're going to have a long talk about different sports, data, research, the power of AI, and obviously everything sports betting and honestly just sports related. Super excited to dive into it. We're just going to go over a few basics today. So I'm super excited to tell you kind of my story and kind of why I do what I do. So without further ado, I think we should get right into it.
How did you get started with this and how do you keep developing?
Yeah, so how did I get started? I would say it was a mix of two of my passions per se. I was big into sports, obviously, and I was super interested in like data work and kind of all the things that had to do with coding. And what was super interesting to me was that when it comes to sports, although we think of sports as a very humane thing, it's a bunch of athletes on the floor, on the court playing, right? A lot of sports is actually can be tied down specifically to data. The best way to think about it is that every event can be a data point. Every single dribble, every single football pass, every single soccer kick could be a data point within itself. And that makes it kind of super interesting to me to really break it down, because not only does it make it easier in my mind specifically, but it makes it kind of feel beneficial when looking at a long scope of games or athletes or players or how they're playing throughout a stretch of games to really see how they're doing and kind of like the impact that they're making. When it comes to how do I keep developing, obviously when I first started doing this for the public like a year or two ago, it started with just sending screenshots of data points of projections that the AI was making, and then it went into emails of sending people email dashboards, and then obviously today I have a whole server where I'm able to post the dashboards through special links, have different bots going on, have a lot of data cheat sheets going on within each channel. So what's been super important to me is obviously the idea of keeping development going. Obviously data is almost unlimited when it comes to this type of thing. With so many players out there, I'm always thinking of new ideas to honestly just provide value. That's been my thing since day one, just find ways to provide value and kind of help people out, whether it's through the data points or honestly through just like the most simple betting understanding, the math behind betting. Because if you guys didn't know, sports betting is actually 100% math in the background of what's going on between the odds and all that. That's all just straight math. So honestly, when I keep developing, I just make sure to think of new ideas, and it's kind of like it's fun because like soon we got football coming on, and I already have plans for fantasy football data, as we know that's a huge market. So yeah, that's honestly how I keep myself going, is just knowing that I have to keep developing stuff.
How does AI change the way people research?
Yeah, the golden question. I get this question often. How does AI change the way people research? My answer is always actually what most people don't seem to think. It's about speed and efficiency. Um, the thing about AI is that although it is a super powerful tool, what makes it special is that it's able to take in, thousands of data points, thousands of different games, and put it into one single projection. And that number is, in a way, the power of those thousands of data points that it takes in. And obviously, it's crucial to understand that why is AI so powerful these days? The average human is asking, when will AI replace our jobs and all that? And that is because the average person does understand that AI is faster and more powerful than the human brain will ever be, because having a machine that dissects data points, trends of athletes, different matchups, different like there's small data points that you would never even think about that the AI takes in, and it really learns the data to help give you information on what might happen in a future game, or even simply give you information on why stuff has been going right for an athlete in the past 5 or 6 games. So when it comes to how does AI change the way people research, having the AI speed up your research by giving you projections, data, but without needing to, go through StatMuse or go through Baseball Reference and check game logs after splits, and then splits the home away, right-handed versus left-handed. The AI, it takes in all that data automatically, and it can give you the value that you need within just a few projections from that data. So that's kind of the summary of how AI changes the way people research, is that time is the only thing we can't buy. Time keeps going. So in order to research efficiently, but also have the power behind your research, AI is honestly the answer to all this. And right now, I would say that's super interesting to say because as AI kind of takes over the world, there's a lot of places still where like AI is being used and it's not really like a necessary thing. But I think when it comes to researching, your favorite athletes or researching your favorite props for the game, I think it's super influential for an AI to help you guide that research because it can do it in such a quick manner that the human brain just cannot.
Can you explain how machine learning really works for sports data?
Yeah, so machine learning. So, kind of what is machine learning sticking with AI? Machine learning is exactly what it sounds like it is. The machine is learning the data in order to provide a future projection outcome or future data points. The machine, it could take in infinite data points in order to help further learn as to why a player is doing what they're doing on the court, why a team is performing the way that they are in certain situations. And that's really what machine learning is. It's a super powerful tool because, as I mentioned before, our brains want to machine learn. When you go check a game log, our brains, they want to go through the game log and see, well, he has gotten a hit in 8 of his last 10 games. He's hit a home run in 4 of his last 10 games. And our brain wants to cycle that information in order to help us achieve a future outcome. We see that the player's been performing and we think, well, he also has a good matchup, so we're going to bet on him today. But honestly, when you have machine learning, it's much faster than your brain doing the machine learning by itself, as we already know. So the machine learning can really take in infinite data points in order to give you the real value extracted. Because that's one of the things that people, I would say, in the sports community kind of struggle with. They don't understand that not all data points are created equally. There's a lot of data points within a player's game logs or a player's stats that are in a way useless to gauging performance. And it's tricky because, and I would say this is the key point, it's tricky because it's different for each player and it's different for each team and it's different for each situation. For some players, let's say in the NBA, the player's 3 point percentage matters so much on how many points they're going to score. But for other players, you would think, well, yes, 3 point percentage matters. But for other players, a lot of times, the 3 point percentage does not matter as much because as long as they're getting a trade off in their other stats, the player is still able to perform accurately. So there's just so much uncertainty going on that an AI or simply a machine will go in and swift through it, analyze it all in order to really find out which data points have value. And that can really only be done that quickly with machine learning capabilities. And that's why it's become the technology of the year, I would say.
What are some important things to know when researching MLB?
Yeah, so kind of shifting away from the data and AI type of thing, more on like a personal level, I would say. When researching the MLB, it's important to understand the types of data that you're going after. For instance, a lot of data research is done over short term, like the last 3 games, last 4 games, and oftentimes that is not a good gauge as to helping your research. But that's why when you're looking at data points over the last 30 games or even season long data, it's important to remember that just because on that specific night a prop didn't go your way, it does not mean that the data was useless because, of course, if the data is for season long, obviously if a player's gotten a hit in 78% of their games, there's still those 22% that the player does not get a hit. So I think it's super important to remember the scope of your data because if you're using season long data to help you research, that is going to be great more often than not. But you're going to have to remember there are going to be outlier games where a player just does not look like himself and his data for that night just looks nothing like his season long trends or season long averages. So that's the first main thing I would say is to know when researching on the MLB and kind of just like with the MLB specifically, you have to be prepared for players to just totally like a couple times a week to like totally go 0 for 4, 0 for 5, and you just got to live with it because that's just the reality of the game. And then you got to be ready for those players to also get 2 or 3 hits within the same game. The MLB is really like that. It's consistent over the long term, but it's super inconsistent over the short term. That's how I would honestly put it because over the long term, we've seen already, because we're in the second half of the season, there's so many guys who are consistently performing, right? But that's over the whole season. If you have the whole season like this and a guy's performing over here, but then you just take a tiny bit like this, he might struggle in that tiny time frame. So that's kind of what I would say is the most important when researching the MLB, is that really understand the scope of your data and really understand that a guy will let you down one or two times a week, and he'll let you down really badly, but that's just the reality of the game, I would say.
Who would you say are some of the best MLB players to bet on this season?
Yeah, kind of a fun question talking about like how to research the MLB and like the scope of the data. If we're looking at obviously season long, I mean the two guys who are dominating, Luis Arraez and Ronald Acuna. I mean Acuna is probably the best player to bet on the MLB this year, just because Arraez is really only hitting like singles and he's not getting much power, but Acuna is, he's hitting doubles, he's hitting home runs, he's doing everything, and most importantly, he's doing it early in games. He loves swinging at the first pitch, and that's something that is super exciting to see when you're betting on him, because a lot of times if you just need him for a hit or 2+ total bases, he'll get that done in the first inning. He bats leadoff always. A couple other cool players that I personally have seen like betting on Shohei, but Shohei really only for home runs, which is a super interesting thing when you dive into it. He's been a pretty consistent home run hitter, but when it comes to simply just getting like 2 total bases, he actually leans more inconsistent, which is kind of interesting given the amount of home runs he's hit this year. There's a lot of really good contact players that are fun to bet on. Josh Naylor has pretty good batting average. He went on a streak. Ketel Marte went on a streak recently. You know, just picking up on these trends that MLB players go through and really riding with them can be super interesting, because it almost feels like when a guy's hot, you can just wake up one morning, you see him, he has a matchup, and you can honestly just take it. So looking at that data specifically has been always fun. But there's loads of players when it comes to pitchers. Obviously, pitching has been an interesting battle this season. A lot of players have been pretty inconsistent pitching, but obviously you have your Striders of the world who can reach 12 strikeouts a game pretty easily, and he'll never. It's never a surprise when he does it. There's so many pitchers where the lines will often be like 3.5, which is pretty low for an entire game, and they'll be able to easily cross that number. So that's kind of where pitching kind of interesting comes in, I would say. But then there's been a lot of star players this year where you just don't really, you're not getting the value from them that you expect compared to the odds that they're given daily. Just a few players to name, obviously. Soto has been he walks a lot, so he's hard to bet on. Trey Turner hasn't been that special. Let's see, I would say Tatis also recently, past few weeks, hasn't been that good to bet on. Early in the season when he came back, he was pretty good. But yeah, there's a lot of players where this nowadays in MLB, you gotta look for the pop kind of compared to like what they're doing just to get a hit, because a lot of times players, they'll hit a bunch of home runs, they'll hit a bunch of doubles, but over the long term they don't get on base as much as you'd hope they would. So yeah, that's what I would say for the best MLB players to bet on this season. Obviously everyone has their favorites, everyone has guys that they ride with, so I think that's what's fun about the MLB, is that there's always a guy or two that you have to your personal self who like you love betting on, because you just know that he's been pretty consistent over the long run.
Can you dive into why MLB betting is a long-term battle?
Yeah, so we just kind of touched on it, of why it's a long-term battle. Obviously, that it's just super inconsistent on the short term, but it seems to be pretty consistent for a lot of bettors, and it's consistent by a lot of players over the long term. And the thing about the MLB is just, if you take it from a rationale of that they play so many games per season, it's over 160 games a year, and they play almost every day. So it's really hard for a guy to consistently perform at the top level, because just from a human element, obviously this is a data podcast, but from the human element, he's going to have days where he's just not there. But also it's super important to remember it's over the long term, because you're going to have high variance in the short term, especially when betting your bankroll. Your bankroll might go down over a week, or it might go up by a week. But those things in the short term, although they emotionally feel so important to us, they really end up not mattering so much over the long term, because if you have 1 week that is absolutely amazing, you can't miss a bet, but then your next 3 weeks are kind of crappy, that's like it's a hard reality to face. But that's why you got to look at stuff over the long term, even though for our brains it's hard to do over the long term, because For us, it's like a nightly thing, obviously. So I would say that's kind of interesting when you think about the human psychology standpoint of it. But yeah, that's why I always look at it long term. I try to, especially when dealing with the MLB, since it's such a streaky league. It's not like the NBA where matchups on the daily in the NBA they don't matter as much because it's not versus pitcher, but it's kind of like more of a team element. Where in baseball it's you versus the pitcher and kind of like you're going at that.
Do you think people should pay for sports picks?
Yeah, should people pay for sports picks? That's a golden question. I would say that I put it like this: people should pay for sports picks. I would say yes, leaning yes, because if you could find an expert in any field that can assist you or at least kind of make it fun for you or provide you value somehow, I would say it's worth it. The only reason I still have some leaning no is just because I feel like there's too many people who have small bankrolls who go after who end up paying for picks. Let's say your bankroll is only $300, which is totally fine. It's really hard when you have $200 to your bankroll, let's say on a monthly basis, to go and pay $60 for that month for a Discord or for people's picks. So I would say be wary there. Another thing is that and this isn't taking shots at anyone, but just a lot of the people who give picks, they're doing the same basic research that you could kind of do on your own. All they're doing is kind of, I guess, you could call it saving you time. So I would say really kind of like learn what a person is doing. The people who are truly good, they don't shy away from providing you value. They'll make it clear to you of what value is being provided and why you should take advantage of it. So that's kind of how I would put it, I'd say.
Why is speed everything?
Yeah, why is speed everything? So I think that's coming back to like why the AI is so powerful because of its speed and efficiency. Speed is everything. I mean, time is limited. Time is who has time to research all day for their bets. So knowing that there is a complex machine that is smarter than any of our brains doing the research for you and telling you that this will happen, that will happen, is honestly a not just fun, but it's kind of like it's an awesome feature because everyone wants to be kind of like nowadays told what to do, which is totally fine. But having a machine that is smarter than anyone that can give you value on a one-on-one basis is super key to have in my book, and it's super interesting to not only have it, but it's super interesting to like use it and use it like a person and analyze like why is it saying this sometimes, or when it says this maybe this will happen, or when it has a pitcher hitting 10 strikeouts tonight, why is it doing that against certain like trends or matchups or all that type of basis fun stuff. So I would say speed is everything because that's kind of the power behind the AI. It's not just that it's super smart, it's that it gives you so much information cranked down into a few seconds of value. That's what I'd honestly put it at. So yeah, that was kind of the final question. I would say that I know this podcast was a little short. Maybe we'll go a little longer next time. I for sure want to stream on here and YouTube, do some more fun stuff with you guys. But yeah, this was super fun. You kind of at least like kind of learned the basics of what I kind of do and why I started and why I plan to keep going. Because with NFL and NBA coming up, so many new data tools they're sitting on my desk. They're ready. They're written down. They're ready to be invented. So I'm super hyped for that. Super, super interested in getting that done. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll try to do this once or twice a week for sure, plus the streams, short-term content for sure. You can learn more at xep.ai. Really appreciate you guys for tuning in. Have a good rest of your day.